WNST, Tal, as we inch closer to the NFL draft season. Yes, we're here to lament the loss of a baseball season at this point. Before the Capitals could blunder and find themselves down 2-0 heading to Columbus, the Orioles went to Boston over the weekend, and I think, thankfully, they sort of smeared the Monday game on the rain to give the Red Sox a sweep, but I don't know that I wanted to see the Orioles take the hill on Monday at Fenway Park. Luke Jones joins us now. He monitored all things that happened to the Orioles over the weekend at Fenway Park, and really not much of it good, Luke Jones.
You stole my thunder. I was going to say the best news of the weekend was an hour after Sunday's loss when they said that Monday morning's game was postponed. But, yeah, I mean, this was a dreadful weekend. I mean, they had a chance to win on Sunday. Really didn't have a chance to win Friday or Saturday when you saw what happened with Chris Tillman. Alex Cobb's debut was awful.
I watched that at Pizza John's. Not much can mess up a Pizza John's pizza, but 3 runs in the first to your $53 million pitcher. You know, somehow the pizza didn't taste just as warm as I wanted it to at Pizza John's. I ordered the pizza. It was 0-0. I got the pizza. It was 3-0. I mean,
I was going to say, I mean, that's the one thing that would comfort you, I would say. But, yeah, I mean, and look, Alex Cobb was signed less than 4 weeks ago. I mean, I don't know what the expectations are for a guy to be up to speed at a certain level at a certain time, but the problem is the Orioles don't have a lot of time to wait for him to get into, quote, regular season.
Yeah, they need him to be a $53 million pitcher.
Well, I mean, again, this is one start. I mean, Andrew Kashner has been really good since his first start, so let's not overreact about that. There's plenty of stuff to be really, really concerned about with this ball club right now. You know, some of the Alex Cobb...
Not Alex Cobb yet, is what we'll say, right?
People already comparing him to Ubaldo Jimenez. I mean, come on, guys. Let's breathe.
I always forget when baseball season enters, all sorts of stupid stuff gets said about the baseball team that every year I'm like, I can't believe these people are this stupid. But it happens. I mean, welcome to Twitter. Welcome to the first kickoff of the Ravens season. Everybody flies in. Everybody just starts saying things. And you and I talk about it on the radio. We're like, did you hear what that clown said at 105.7? No, because I don't listen to it. Because I can't. I mean...
I call it small sample size syndrome. I mean, and honestly, it's people coming off of an off season where you're in football mode. And
I call it baseball fans in the spring.
I mean, it's just and every fan base has it. It's not it's not something exclusive to Orioles.
Yeah, Boston, they're printing their playoff tickets already.
But that said, I was just going to say, and look, we're 10% of the way through the schedule. Is the season over? No, but at the same time, when you look at a team that's 5-11. And it's not just that they're 5-11. Sunday's loss was only the third out of those 11 losses that have been by 3 or fewer runs. The problem is when you look at all the peripheral information, all those things you're looking for some optimism. You know, right now this team is a minus 35 run differential. That's worse than the American League. Right now you look at them, they're averaging barely over 3 runs per game. There's not a whole lot you can look to right now and say, okay, they're 5-11, but some teams like the LA Dodgers, for example, they're off to a bad start. I mean, the National League defending National League champions, but at the very least, you look at the talent they have, you look at the fact that that they've lost a lot of close games, and you say, you know what, the worm's going to turn there. Something's they're going to get themselves righted.
Boswell's jumping off the Washington Post building, from what I saw Monday morning.
Yeah, right. But with the Orioles, there hasn't been a whole lot to point to be positive about whatsoever.
Well, you'll say that would wake up. Well, Machado's bat's all right. I mean, he's their best player. He's been okay. But, Chris Davis might not wake up. I mean, and they might give him 514 at-bats trying to wake up, literally, right?
Right. They're going to hit better. I mean, now, that said, that doesn't mean I think that they're necessarily going to become a good offense. But, I mean, you look at it, to me, this team has one really, really strong positive, and it's Dylan Bundy. Beyond that, you look at the position players. They have 3 regulars right now. I'd say Machado, Mancini swung the bat pretty well, and Pedro Alvarez has been kind of the big surprise. I mean, a guy that 6 weeks ago we didn't think was going to make the roster. Those 3 have swung the bat well. You have 2 part-timers that have been okay, Chance Sisco and Craig Gentry, of all people. Everyone else, from Jonathan Scope and Adam Jones down to Caleb Joseph and Chris Davis, have ranged from poor to below replacement level kind of play. I mean, that's just the way it's been. I mean, Adam Jones has had a couple moments, but overall he hasn't swung the bat well. Chris Davis has been dreadful. Caleb Joseph, who I've been an advocate for over the last few years, has been absolutely awful with the bat. So, I mean, there are a number of players on this team that just are not playing well. I think,
and man, they strike out a lot. Oh my God, right?
They do. Yeah, I mean, there's no question about that. And I mean, it's one thing. They're going to strike
16
out.
16 games, 177 strikeouts. Do the math on that, man. I mean, that's 11 strikeouts a game on average, man. I mean, that's crazy.
I hear you. They have I think looking at going into Sunday, I want to say they had 5 or 6 qualified hitters who were above the major league average in strikeouts.
Well, they make every pitcher Nolan Ryan if you're striking out 11 times a game, literally, right? Like literally.
And I want to be clear about this, and I was even talking to a couple different Orioles fans about this on Sunday. The fact that they've started 5-11 shouldn't be a shock from a standpoint of we knew what schedule they had starting the season. We knew they were going to be on the road a lot. Now, that said, acknowledging that, because that's part of the story here. It absolutely is. Go take a look at the record of the teams that they've played so far, even in games where they weren't playing the Orioles. Those teams have gotten off to a good start. I mean, Minnesota's off to a good start. Toronto's off to a good start. Boston's off to a good start. The Yankees haven't gotten off to a great start, but you still expect they're going to be there in the end. But you go down the list, and all those teams have played well. Now, that said, I go back to my point that I made earlier. If this team was 5-11 right now and had 4 one-run losses and had lost 3 other games by 2 runs, I would say, okay, you know what? They're putting themselves in a bind big time, clearly, especially when the Red Sox have gotten off to a 13-2 start. But on the flip side, they have lost a lot of close games, and it's not as though they've been getting blown out. Well, you can't say that. The problem is they have gotten blown out a good bit.
It's not like the Caps where they've blown 2-goal leads every night.
Right, well, I mean, I don't know if any DC fans are going to want to be here being down 2-0, but the point is, if they were playing a slew of close games here early on, I would be saying to pump the brakes a little bit more on this, as much as you don't want to be 6 games under 500 as you have just passed tax day. But, I mean, it's starting to get late really early here if this team doesn't turn it around quickly. And, again, they've had a tough schedule. They've been on the road a lot. They've played miserable weather, but you know what? Your opponents have too. So no one's expecting them to score 10 runs a game when they're facing Chris Sale and it's 33 degrees. At the same time, you can't score 1 run 3 batters into the game and then do nothing the rest of the way. And we've just seen that kind of story over and over and over so far this season. So, again, we're 16 games in. I'm not putting nails in the coffin yet, but at the same time, you're really starting to bury yourself. I mean, the division, I mean, everyone's chasing the Red Sox already. I mean, even Toronto's 3.5 back, and they're 9-5 through their first 14 games. But it really is concerning when you look at not just the record, but you look at everything else. The strange thing is at this point, and I wouldn't have said this, and it's not as though their starting rotation's been great by any means, and we'll get to Chris Tillman, I'm sure, but I actually think I might have a little bit more optimism for the starting rotation getting better than this lineup at this point. So that just tells you how bad a shape this team is in, because even with that being said, this starting rotation is still a major question mark getting beyond Bundy, and certainly Cashner has been really good so far. So there's not a whole lot to like about this ball club right now, and yeah, we're 10% of the way through the schedule, and there's almost 150 games left to play, but it's really getting concerning if you're an Orioles fan.
He is Luke Jones. He is Baltimore Luke, and Luke at WNST.net. All of our WNST.net coverage brought to you by our friends at Howard Bank, a relentless commitment to being the best at everything they do. Branches throughout Baltimore and the unique hands-on approach to banking. Every person at Howard Bank empowered to help you. See them at howardbank.com. Royal Farms, real fresh, real fast. Make sure you're picking up the party platter for draft night. They got the fried chicken over there, the sandwiches, of course, that you know about that, and you can always get some Ben & Jerry's to bring home with you as well. Use your Royal Farms app on your phone when you gas up. You'll save up points. You'll use those towards Western fries, fried chicken, and the tastiest coffee in the land. I have some Kona Blend right here in my Cole Roofing mug. Also brought to you by Cole Roofing. We all felt that March wind blow in. April is now here, and you are assessing the damage if you are a business owner, a commercial, or corporate roof space. Cole Roofing is the answer for you. Pfister Energy also there, and Bill Cole will be here later on in the week to lament the loss of the Orioles beginning of the season. I mentioned Pizza John's the other day. Saturday, my wife and I, we were looking at the meatball subs. We were looking at the ravioli, which I've never ordered. I need a little insight. If anybody's had the ravioli at Pizza John's, the cheese or the meat, I need to know about that. I almost ordered it, but you're in there and you smell the pizza, and you're down on Back River Neck Road in Essex, and you're thinking, well, I won't be here for a couple of weeks. If I don't get the pizza, I'm not going to have the pizza. So I got the pizza. That's what I did. Pizza John's, 50 years, the ice cream stand there, and, of course, ice-cold beer. My wife had a Corona with a lime. I'm not going to lie to you. And I probably should have taken the drinking given how Alex Cobb was pitching on Saturday. Pizza John's in Essex will be there more often. And don't forget, we're going to be at Michael's Cafe on Tuesday night for Game 3, trying to turn the tide for the Caps a little bit. We're going to be up in Timonium, eating the split-level soup, having a Cabernet, maybe even a steak on Tuesday night with my wife as Game 3 Caps and the Blue Jackets, and Game 1 of the Orioles and the Tigers. And I bring Luke Jones back in here, our intrepid Oriole reporter, who is awaiting the team to get back home at the end of the week. And I'll say this. It's not the softest part of the schedule, but it's a softer part of the schedule. Seeing the Tigers a couple times, seeing Tampa Bay. In between, they'll have Cleveland come in here this weekend, and a team certainly capable of winning a championship. But this Detroit trip, this is where you got to get well against a team that might be just as bad as you are, right?
Yeah, I mean, you have to, at the bare minimum, take 2 out of 3 from this team. I mean, you just got to start winning games. I mean, you can't be in this territory where, and look, no one expected the Orioles to win the division, but even start looking at the wild card, and you're in that 5-6 game out territory. And mathematically speaking, there's plenty of time to make up ground, but you need to start playing better. I mean, it's just, you need to start showing some signs that you're going to swing the bats better. And look, I think they're going to do better than scoring just over 3 runs a game. I think they're going to get better than that as the weather does heat up. But at the same time, how much better? Is it going to be good enough? Especially when you know that the starting rotation, even if it's improved from last year, is still going to be a major question mark, especially when you get to that number 5 spot. But this really is a portion of the schedule now where finish up this road trip by taking a series at the very least, and then come home and you're playing some teams. Even Cleveland, we know what kind of capability they have, but their offense has been almost as bad as the Orioles to this part in the run scoring department anyway. So you just have to start winning games. You need to get to the point where you're chipping away and you're close to being back to 500 at some point here over the next 10, 11 days. And if you do that, then you exhale a little bit and you're in better shape and you don't feel like the season is coming to an end by the end of April. But if this continues to go sideways and you're 10 games under 500 at the end of April, I mean, you just put yourself in a position where you have to be so good the rest of the way. And I don't know if anyone looks at this team, and I know you picked them to win 85 games.
I feel like a fool. I mean, I just thought that the bats would be better. I thought the arms would be better. I thought the bullpen would be better. I thought there would be a lot of motivation. You know what I mean? When it really came down to it, when they picked up Cobb, if I'm a player on the team and I'm Adam Jones and I've sat around watching this offseason, when they picked up Cashner, when they bought bargain basement, which they're wont to do, and I know Duquette's not really running the place anymore, and we'll get to that Ken Rosenthal report over the weekend, and Brady Anderson being the architect now of Cashner and Cobb and these late signings and sort of the reason the Valencias and the Rasmuses are around, because Brady's kind of sort of running it, John's kind of sort of running it, Peter is definitely not running it anymore, and I don't know where they're going to pick the pieces up and who's going to be responsible for trades and all that stuff that we've been talking about for 18 months, that now they're in this spot where things are bad, the roster's bad, the bullpen's bad, the shuttle's a mess, the rules Rule 5 thing. They've already, jettisoned my namesake, Nestor Cortez. I felt bad. I went to poor Nestor's Twitter, and he's already back with the Yankees on his Twitter. All the Orioles stuff's gone now all of a sudden. So I guess it was like a bad dream for 8 weeks for him. But, we're into the season now, and all the talk of the offseason and are they prepared and are they ready to play, then you got to go out there and take the ball every night. You got to go out there and play defense, and you got to go out there and hit the ball. And all of the flaws of the team have been on display the first 2 weeks, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's very clear. I mean, like I said, there's not a whole lot to point to. And as much as you mentioned the excitement about Alex Cobb, but that really allowed people to, or not allowed because people were talking about it, but it really enabled a lot of people to overlook just the things that they didn't do in the offseason, like add a legitimate right fielder. I mean, Colby Rasmus was their solution there.
Or a leadoff hitter, throw that in too.
Well, yeah, I mean, that leadoff we've been talking about for a number of years. They've been able to win without a legitimate leadoff hitter before, so I'll at least give them some semblance of the benefit of the doubt on that one. They made it to the wild card a couple years ago with Adam Jones as a leadoff hitter. We know Adam Jones isn't that kind of a hitter, but a big spot, and this is where it's crazy, because when you talk about the fact that they cut their opening day payroll by roughly 10%, even with the Alex Cobb signing, this is a team that let Ryan Flaherty go, which, by the way, I'm fine with. Okay, no problem. Ryan Flaherty's nothing special. He's a utility player. But how about you actually replace him with another legitimate utility player? And I know people were crushing Danny Valencia on Sunday, and I get it. He made two bad plays in the inning that cost the Orioles the ball game. But guess what? Danny Valencia has a career minus 36 defensive runs saved. There's no secret that he can't play defense. And you have this guy as your utility infielder. I mean, what does that tell you about your roster construction, especially if you supposedly value defense? I mean, it's just one of those things that, what do you expect? I don't blame Danny Valencia there. I blame Dan Duquette or Brady Anderson or Buck Showalter or all three of them. Whatever combination as far as that specific job, because I don't think Dan.
But we don't really know who's in charge, do we? Really, right? Like, the fans love to get in a chat room and blame Duquette, and they've loved to do that for a number of years. And look, I'm no Duquette apologist in any way, and I think he's quite frankly kind of a weird guy and a bit of a jerk. He's been kind of an ass to me, quite frankly, in his time here. But that doesn't shock me. It says Orioles on the badge, but I can't get down on him when no one even steps up to say who is responsible for this. They send Buck out every night, and Buck plays the role. I mean, it's kind of like Trump on The Apprentice. It's kind of like, he's in charge, kind of like you're hired or you're fired. But we all kind of know Buck. This is not Buck's design, and Buck's not really running the place, and I think Buck will be gone before he's put in any sort of position to really run the place. I think he has a hand in it and certainly takes some credit when things go well. Things are bad here. Whose fault is it? I don't know whose fault it is. I don't know who to blame. That's sort of the beauty of the Oriole, the business part of this is because you can't blame Peter anymore. Yeah, because he's now the sympathetic figure because he was such a great guy and saved baseball for Baltimore. That's going to be the new narrative for him moving forward. We're going to go into the sympathy era for him, and the team stinks again this year, and nobody's going to the ballpark. And that's the real scary part is that this is a really bad year for people to drift away in May for them, to not be watching the team, because I'm already convinced interest is pretty low in general. They haven't underfilled new fans, and they've had older fans sort of die off. And then there's people like me that are 50 that are just kind of pissed off after 25 years and aren't giving them money. I mean, I find a lot of those people that are just drifted, and you see the ballpark so empty, you see the energy around it empty. This has to be a year where they get some energy back, not the other direction. And it's the middle of April, we're not to the draft, and if you're just a fringe fan, not you or me that are in it every night, I don't know what reason there's going to be to watch an 8-21 baseball team in a week and a half. You know what I mean?
Well, the reasons are going to be you can take your kids for free and things of that nature, which, they are good ideas anyway, but certainly they're going to be leaning on that even more heavily now if, in fact, they're not going to get back in the race and they're going to be a team that's going to be looking at losing 90 to 95 games and rebuilding and selling off parts at the end of July. But, as far as the big picture thing, they've had 2 series so far. I don't know how much you can really draw from a late March series with the Twins and a weeknight series with Toronto when, as we talked about, Alex Cobb's signing was done so late in the offseason that I think there was some excitement. I think there was some traction there, but not enough.
Their Fan Fest was a funeral, right? Like, literally, right? Like, there was nothing the day of Fan Fest. It was all about trading Machado, literally, right?
Well,
and then Scope doesn't show up. And, even on the thing in the offseason that could have, it's the festival. It's the time to get excited and all that stuff. They didn't even really have that in the offseason. I'm the guy who got excited when they signed Cobb. I'm the guy that jumped the gun and said, well, I think he's worth 10 wins. I mean, literally, I thought he was worth 10 wins to them over Mike Wright pitching 32 times this year, right?
Sure. Going back, FanFest was actually decently attended considering where they were. And look, these big picture things we're still speaking in hypotheticals from a standpoint of they barely played any home games. Now, is a 5-11 start going to help their advanced sales? Of course not. But
I don't think they had a lot of advanced sales. I think that's part of the issue is that when the old man started to fade and John came in and they looked around and they looked up on when did they announce the free kids? February 20th, something like that?
It was during spring training.
Well, when they looked at the advanced sales in February, when they looked at season tickets, business sales, corporate sales, all of that, how many tickets do we have sold for that night in June that's not a bobblehead night? And, I bet you across the board it's the lowest it's ever been, I don't want to say in the history of the organization, but certainly in the history of Camden Yards. And since these people have been around, and then they're like, all right, well, let's sign some players. Let's let kids in for free. Let's add promotional nights. Let's try to do something. And they thought that they could be competitive, but they haven't had a season where the thing went off the cliff early like this since the McPhail sweater year, right? So we're going back 6-7 years now, right? And having that in a year when you don't have sales, boy, the free kids thing, I don't know that there's anything more they can do on that thing. They have no Machado bobblehead nights, right, because they're afraid they're going to deal him, so they didn't give him any promotional nights. So, those nights where you get down there at 4 o'clock and there's already 1,400 people waiting to get their giveaway, those are going to be the only nights that, we see people in the upper deck this year, from what I can tell.
Well, I'm not going to argue with you about it. Even the last few years where they've been good, their attendance hasn't been all that great. So, you have to work harder from that standpoint to try to draw more people to the ballpark with promotions and kids getting in free and bargain nights and things of that nature. But, in the meantime, it's really a case of looking at this ball club right now and, where's the light at the end of the tunnel, at least in terms, short-term speaking, to get yourself playing more competitively? Jonathan Scope, you would assume, is probably going to miss at least 3 or 4 weeks here with an oblique strain. I know he spoke optimistically about only missing 10 days, but obliques are a type of injury that can really linger if you don't treat that conservatively. So I think it would be a mistake to think he's going to come back a week and a half from now.
And by the way, it's really when the season goes off the rails for a guy like that, right? Like, young guy, a lot of momentum, doing well, slumping, hurting, now sitting at a 230 batting. He's going to come back Preakness weekend and still be batting 230. That's a tough thing to get out from underneath when you're injured. Adam Jones had a hard time last year because he wasn't really right early in the year.
Well, it's definitely a challenge. Now, that said, Jonathan Scope, almost 3 years to the day, hurt his knee at Fenway and missed almost 3 months, and then he had a really good second half. So I think the big key with that is you have to give him enough time to get right. The problem is, and I know Chris Davis, I want to say, Dave, I can't remember what year it was. It might have been 2014 off the top of my head. I know he missed time last year with an oblique, but last year he actually sat out for the better part of a month, and I don't think that was his reason why he wasn't swinging the bat well. A few years back, though, he did miss, and that was the 15-day DL at that point, and he only missed, I think, either the minimum or a couple days over the minimum, but came back, wasn't healthy, and that just that really ruined the rest of his season as he tried to play through it. But, this is... you're talking about your team's most valuable player a year ago. This is one of the few guys on this team that you could still point to and say is either in his prime or is potentially still ascending. I wasn't guaranteeing that he was going to have a better season than last year, but I certainly wasn't going to say that he couldn't duplicate what he did last year. So it's tough, and like I said, when you don't have a real utility hitter, or a utility infielder, I should say, you now have a guy like Danny Valencia or Pedro Alvarez or Vielma, the guy they called up, now handling third base or second base, and Tim Beckham's playing the other spot, and you still have Manny Machado at shortstop, and the infield defense, which had kind of been the one thing left to save what has been a declining defense for a few years now, and we know that. I wrote about this after the 2015 season. I even went back and found it at WNST.net, talking about the defense not being as good as it was in 14 when they led the American League in defensive runs saved and had a great fielding percentage and had all these different things going for them. Their defense has pretty steadily declined since then, but the infield defense was the one thing that masked all that. Well, now the infield defense has fallen apart. So on top of not being able to hit and their pitching not being very good and being terrible at certain times when guys like Chris Tillman take the hill, they also can't play defense now. So other than that, everything's fine, right?
Yeah, Luke Jones is here. He is Luke at WNST.net, as well as Baltimore Luke out on Twitter. All of our WNST coverage brought to you by our friends at King Discount Liquors. I'm not going to lie to you. I went into King Discount Liquors. They had my favorite wine in stock, and it was a couple dollars off a bottle, usually like $14.99. It was $11.99, so I stocked up. I gave the King a ring on Saturday. They've given Paul King off on Saturdays at King Discount Liquors, so I did not get to see the King, but I do see him show up on my television along with Johnny Bev. Get to Rosedale, Pulaski Highway. Give the King a ring. Our sponsor for 15 years now out on Pulaski Highway, and I did bring home some stout as well because I need that sort of thing during the Caps playoffs. Box Hill Pizzeria, the best crab cakes in Arthur County, can be shipped anywhere. Go to boxhillpizzeria.com. Someone's going to get a delightful treat if you ship them some crab cakes this summer or during the holiday season for sure. And you're going to get a delightful treat next time you're up in Abingdon because Box Hill Pizzeria has remodeled. They're in the middle of remodeling, bigger and better. Tommy and Chris always doing that for you up there. Fremont Mortgage as well. Carl Delmont will be here this week. I'm having lunch with Carl Delmont out at Michael's Cafe in Timonium. Don't make a 30-year mistake by choosing the wrong lender. You need Fremont Education Online. You need to buy, sell, refinance your home. You're just thinking about things. My wife and I are in that thinking about it phase right now. Go to Fremont.com and learn more. And Carl's getting me ready for soccer and World Cup as well. Luke is here. I want to remind everyone, if you are a Caps fan, Michael's Cafe on Tuesday night for Game 3. My wife and I are just going to sit out there. The Orioles are playing the Tigers that night, which I can welcome Luke back in and for this. The Caps have been tough enough to watch over the weekend, and now the Orioles go out to Detroit. Boy, the weather's been bad. I mean, it's been a difficult start to Major League Baseball, not just for the Orioles, but I think around the sport to have it sort of settle in at this point at a time when the NBA's playing, hockey's playing. We had a good Masters last weekend. We're all into the draft, and the NFL schedule's going to come out this week. It's difficult for baseball to not get lost, even in a place like Boston, right, where they're 13-2, playing great baseball, spending money in the offseason. But when it's 41 degrees and raining, even Fenway Park, it was $10 to get into the game there over the weekend.
Yeah, and even look at Sunday. I mean, you have Chris Sale against Dylan Bundy, a really fun pitching matchup, and it's 34 degrees, and they're 20-mile-per-hour winds. I mean,
they started the season in March. That was a great idea, right? That was they all got together and thought that was good fun, right?
Well, I mean, you're talking about trying to give players a few more off days. They're trying to prevent the World Series from lingering into the month of November. I mean, it's just at some point in time you look at this and say, baseball wasn't meant to be played over 6.5. Counting the postseason over seven, going on almost 7.5 months. I mean, it's just the season is just getting to the point where it's too long. It's one thing for late March, but when you're having places having snow in mid-April, I mean, that's a bit strange. There's no doubt about that.
Either go to 154 or add a doubleheader a month in the good months. I don't know what to say. I mean, there's no reason the Red Sox-Orioles thing shouldn't have been, well, I wouldn't say couldn't or shouldn't have been a doubleheader on a Friday or a Saturday in the spring or the summer if they're going to take away 3 or 4 home dates, if that's the way the thing's going to go. But, I mean, the bigger picture of this, it's really a bad idea. And every single year, I've been on the radio 27 years, every single year it's really a bad idea to be playing baseball in April all the way around. I mean, it's not good for the players, it's not good for the fans, it's not good for the sponsors, it's not good for TV. TV. It's just, well, this is the way we've always done it, right? And there's the way they used to do it was they played doubleheaders. The way they used to do it was they took care of the fans, they grew the game, they signed autographs, they drank their milk, they said their prayers, they ate their cookies, all the things Hulkamania did. By the way, I watched the Andre the Giant thing, so that's our next segment. You and I are going to have to get into that. But they do use that, well, this is the way we've always done it, and this is the way we make money. But it is a little embarrassing. I mean, every year you want to get off to a fast start at anything you do. I think at anything in life, baseball never really gets off to a fast start, does it? For a lot of reasons, but the weather being a big, big part of it.
Well, I mean, but also you are also comparing it to the NHL playoffs, and you're also comparing it to the NBA playoffs. And even if you shorten the season to 154, or even if you have doubleheaders, everyone knows there's still 6 months left to go in the baseball season. It's the same reason that I don't care about the NBA in October and November and December. And people don't pay as much attention to the NHL in October, November, and December. I mean, that's part of it. That's going to be part of the obstacle there. But the weather. I don't understand why any new ballpark, especially in Minnesota, for example, how you don't have a retractable roof. At this point, I would almost mandate, in this day and age, especially when you're even seeing in the NFL, we've seen it here in Baltimore with attendance issues and even talking about just the gradual decrease in attendance in various places because of HDTV. I don't know why any new stadiums there wouldn't be a mandate that you need to put a retractable roof on it. I mean, I'm not saying I want a retractable roof on Fenway. That's a little bit different. But any new ballpark, why would you not put a roof on the thing? I mean, especially retractable ones where if it's nice out, then enjoy the outside weather. If it's miserable, then you can play in your
Well, especially if you're going to start the season in March every year, too.
Sure. So, some of these issues are more complex. And look, I don't expect baseball to just go down to a 120-game schedule, and frankly, I don't want them to. But are there some ways that you can shave a couple weeks off the season from a time standpoint, from a calendar standpoint, and still maintain the integrity of the schedule that they like to talk about and still play at least 154, if not 162? Yeah, you play 2 doubleheaders a week, and you do that over a 6-month season. There's basically 2 weeks right there. So it's something that they need to talk about. There's no question about that. And we are dealing with some really strange weather here over the first 3 weeks. Look at the number of postponements this year compared to 2 years ago. Someone, I forget who it was, I think Joe Sheehan retweeted it, but the number of postponements we've had around baseball already in 2018 have nearly equaled or surpassed what we saw 2 years ago.
Well, that screws everybody's life up, right? I mean, I saw that when they're going to make this game up, and you and I talked about this over the weekend. We knew Monday was going to get banged. I look at the forecast. The marathon's going on. You can see it. And I said the game's going to get banged. It's going to get played Preakness weekend, and it is. And now all of a sudden they're going to wind up playing, a 19-day stretch or whatever it is of straight baseball every day. There's no off day in the middle of the summer. And, that week it'll be 94 because that's what happens. And, then these things get crunched together and, it becomes a nightmare later in the year because of the weather. So, yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. And you just go down through and it's been very disappointing. Think about it. Let's say you're an out-of-town Red Sox fan who even had a family member running in the Boston Marathon and you thought, you know what, I'm going to go support them and I'm going to go see the Patriots Day game. It'll be fun. It's going to be a really memorable long weekend, and then a game gets canceled, and that game, you're not going to be able to go get back in town for that. It's really tough to plan when everything is so dependent on weather, and that kind of just goes back to the challenge of having all these games and having such a long season and not having retractable roofs. It's a major challenge. So it's really disappointing. And I pulled up the tweet. This is from Dane Perry. So far in 2018, and he sent this out Sunday afternoon, so I don't know if there might have been a couple more postponements after that because we had a slew of them on Sunday. But according to Dane Perry, and he's with CBS Sports, that's 20 postponements so far in 2018. In 2016, there were 25 all season. So that does tell you that we are dealing with an anomaly here. We are dealing with something that's really an outlier, even with some of the challenges we've had with starting the season a little bit earlier in recent years and dealing with cold weather and having a long postseason. So I don't know if you make changes based on what's happened here over the first 3 weeks of the season, but it does really illustrate how frustrating it can be. I mean, take a look at a team like the Tigers or the Twins, some of the number of postponements they've had and how many fewer games they've played compared to so many other teams in baseball. I mean, it's just it's a major challenge, and to your point, it is really tough when even people that are really excited about the start of baseball season and you have these postponements and rescheduled games and all these, it really does stunt the enthusiasm for your club. And then you're a team like the Orioles and you get off to a 5-11 start and it makes it even worse.
He is Luke Jones. He is Baltimore Luke. He will be monitoring all things Orioles as they head to Motown to take on the Tigers, who have been in the struggle as well. The fans have been struggling. The weather's been struggling. They're happy in a couple of places like Boston and some other places where they've gotten off to a great start. The Mets are off to an incredible start, as are the Shohei Ohtani L.A. Angels when they're not getting rained on. The Arizona Diamondbacks, Pittsburgh Pirates, all with great starts this year. We're going to be talking hockey. We're going to be talking NFL draft, the NFL schedule later on this week. All of our WNST programming brought to you by our friends at buyatoyota.com and the Audio Vault. It is there for you 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world. Download, listen when you want, where you want, how you want. Do it all. It's the TuneIn Radio app. It's all brought to you by buyatoyota.com. Our morning newspaper ships directly to your email inbox each and every morning at 7 a.m. It's all brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com, including the Maryland Jockey Club entries for Laurel this week. The Tessio running this Saturday down at Laurel. A couple more weeks at Laurel. My wife and I are doing Derby Day at Laurel. Then we move over to Hi-Ho, Pimlico. Preakness coming up in 5 weeks now, and the Pink Weekend as well as the Black-Eyed Susan on Friday, the 18th of May. All of that in the morning newspaper, all brought to you by Planet Fitness. The WNST Tech Service alive all weekend long. I'm sure it's going to be alive this week when the NFL schedule comes out, as well as draft next Thursday and Friday and Saturday. Busy football time around here as the Ravens report to Owings Mills. Flacco's going to be tossing the football around this week as well. We will be on the scene in Owings Mills. All of it brought to you by our friends at Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. If there's any breaking news, you get it first on the WNST Tech Service. Dennis Kolatzos will be here on Thursday from 3 until 5, driving you home. It is the SSV on WNST. Reminder, we are partners with the Modell Lyric Performing Arts Center downtown. Excited about that. We had the Wildcrats in this weekend. Britt Floyd, the music of Pink Floyd. I know Luke likes that. On draft night, the 26th, next Thursday night. You can monitor the draft at our buyatoyota.com Audio Vault, as well as our tech service, and go down and see Britt Floyd do the music of Pink Floyd on the 26th. Don't forget Jackson Brown on May 3rd. The Baltimore Brigade return home next Friday, the 28th, against the Albany Empire. Saturday the 28th against the Albany Empire. AFL action. The Brigade got their first win of the year over the Valor on Friday at the Royal Farms Arena. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net. If you need to find me, I'm Nasty at WNST.net. He is Luke at WNST.net. Baltimore Luke at on Twitter. I'm me on Twitter. We are WNST.net on Twitter. And we are WNST.net AM 1570 and WNST, Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports.